As Tommy Walsh turning our attention to hurling. Tommy Walsh threw out his All-Ireland favourites to Owen last Thursday morning right here on OTB AM. He doubled down on them again last night with Joe. Have a look.
Did I hear rightly that you reckon Waterford are going to win the All-Ireland?
Yeah, listen, obviously it's very difficult to predict it, but yeah, I do. I have a hunch for it was before last weekend, Waterford and Clare, and Waterford to nudge it. Well, now listen, as I said, it could be any of one of probably 9 teams, but that's where my hunch goes. For the reason for it is they had such a short summer last year, and they were decimated by injuries in that Munster kind of league championship type format. So it was kind of like a written off year really from the minute that started. So just with a new manager, usually with a new manager, we already have seen it with Tipperary, we've seen it with Waterford the weekend. They kind of nearly get a new lease of life because everyone is out to impress and everyone believes they have a chance. So, and they have the hurlers, because we've seen what they did about 2 or 3 years ago in the Under-21 Championship, Joe, where, they obliterated nearly every team in it. There was very little close matches. So, yeah, I have a hunch, but as I said, like any one of 9 teams could do it. But yeah, I'll go with Waterford.
Yeah, any one of 9 teams. That's why it is a properly exciting championship. Daithí Regan, good morning to you. How you doing?
The very best, gentlemen. How are you?
Very well, very well. What do you think of Waterford's chances? New manager, first season. Is there something in that?
Well, there'll be certainly a fresh impetus, but I think a lot of it at the end of the day is going to revert back to the style of play, because I think you will not win an All-Ireland final if you play a spare defender. I think that's been proven over the last number of years. So a lot will depend on it. I think it must be acknowledged what Derek McGrath did when he came in, because Waterford were being perceived at that stage as a team who were going to drop from the top echelons pretty much down and cast adrift of everybody else. So what Derek did was he created a stability within Waterford and made them very, very effective in the way that they hurled, made them very competitive and made them a threat in a time scale a hell of a lot quicker than anybody thought Waterford were going to get to. So Derek McGrath deserves immense credit for what he did from that perspective. However, for Waterford to win an All-Ireland final, things must evolve within how they actually play. That's the only question mark. So we can't take in isolation their victory at the weekend as any indicator, no more than we can many of the other games the weekend, because one game is not a trend or doesn't set a trend. One game must be taken in isolation. We must be patient and we must watch over a period of time the trends that occur with different teams over 3, 4 and 5, 6 games of the National League. It's not a bad shout from the perspective they're a dark horse. I don't think right this minute they deserve to be put into the echelons of genuine contenders ahead of the current All-Ireland champions, the previous year's All-Ireland champions, and the previous years to that All-Ireland champions. I wouldn't contend that, but I think it's a good shout for an outside bet.
Okay, so Limerick and Galway and Tip?
Limerick, Galway and Tip, unquestionably for me, yeah.
Yeah. Are Kilkenny anywhere close to them?
Yes, they are. Closer than I would have said at this time last year. National League champions, very unlucky to lose to the ultimately the All-Ireland champions. So again, if you're to take it in relation to Brian Cody, I held very strongly the view with all the Kilkenny retirements in a short period of time that it was a certainty that there was going to be a period that was going to ensue where Kilkenny were going to endure a barren period of time. For me, the issue was not the amount of players that were going to lose. The critical aspect was that Cody stayed, because the new players he was going to bring into the ranks were going to understand the ethos and the core of what makes Kilkenny great. Now, if it had been somebody else without his demanding demeanour as a manager, new players coming in may not have attuned themselves to the level of expectation that Brian has for what a top-class inter-county team requires. So to that level, he has made them ultra competitive in a very short time span, considering all the changes. So yes, Kilkenny are genuine contenders again.
The other thing that was important was that enough of that old core of players are still there or thereabouts to be able to just show everybody what the standards that Cody expects, but what they expect as players and teammates as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, within the dressing room dynamic, there are leaders, and great leaders within that dynamic who are used to winning and then have started to go through bad periods. These are winners. These are guys that want to get back winning as soon as possible. So they're like Cody's lieutenants in the dressing room, because privately they speak when the manager isn't there. And what greater bunch of players could you have than the likes of Walsh and Reid and guys like that, Fenley, to be able to say to these young fellas, you're now a Kilkenny senior hurler. These are the demands of a Kilkenny senior hurler. This is what's expected of you. And if you don't ship up to it, you'll answer to us as well as to the gaffer. So you're absolutely correct to point that out. It's critical, Ger.
Here's Brian Cody speaking with Oisin Langan after Kilkenny's win at the weekend against Cork. Have a look.
Brian Cody, Kilkenny manager, that's a good start to the Alliance League in 2019.
Yeah, no, it was. The performance was decent, and obviously the result was what we were hoping to get as well. But the attitude was very, very good all through the field, I thought, and a lot of players acquitted themselves very well.
Your half-back line was on top for most of the game, but kind of provided the platform for you, didn't it?
Yeah, no, it was decent. The three lads played well. They're three good lads. There was not massive experience with any of them really, but they showed that they have the required ambition and honesty to try and get to that level.
You showed as well that you're able to kind of pick teams apart with short moves, and when you needed to, you went long today as well.
Look, I mean, you've got to play the game that's in front of you, and the players have to use their instinct. They're not going out told they must do this, they must do that. They have to play what's in front of them and make the right decisions with the ball. And they have to be trusted to do that, and they did it well. What
specifically are you looking for at this time of year?
Actually, really, at this time of the year, you're looking at attitude and the way they approach the thing, and the fact that they just go about it and just go and play, But attitude is huge, really, because, if that's not right, everything else is wrong.
And it's a trip to Ennis next, down to Clare.
It's a bit of a trip down to Clare right next week, so we'll see how that goes.
What about injuries? Richie Hogan initially in the squad this week, but wasn't in the end. Yeah. What's his situation?
Just a bit of tightness in the back, so we're not going to take any chances with him, so we'll have to see how he is for next week.
Happy with the start?
Happy enough, yeah.
Cheers, Brian.
Cheers.
One quick point about this before we leave. We haven't seen Richie Hogan fully fit and free from injury for a while, and it's a real pity for anybody who loves hurling, because one more season or two more seasons of Richie Hogan injury free would be the type of thing that would help cement his legacy as one of the best hurlers of his generation, but also give us something to marvel at for 2 more years.
Well, the opposition may not marvel at him because he's destroyed so many teams over the years. I would agree with you, Ger. It's been fantastic watching him over the years. I think he's been one of the most skillful players we've had in the country in the last 15 years. I do expect we'll see him in Championship, and I do expect, all going well, we'll see him pretty much injury-free. I think he's a guy who's made it quite clear over the last couple of years that he acknowledges he's coming towards the latter end of his career, and he's basically training now as a professional player. And his job allows him to do that, and good luck to him. He deserves the opportunity to wind it down in the way that he sees fit. So I think with that kind of mining of himself and that kind of medical conditioning and mental conditioning that he's going to have, I think we will see a good year out of him yet, unless it's injuries that just take its toll and medical advice is you're not going to return to the levels that you were, because he's a player that needs to be firing at 100%. When he's at 100%, he's one of the best in the country.
I wanted to talk to you about Tip on Saturday night, Daithí. It seems that just looking at them immediately, there is already signs of more of a plan in place from a Tipperary perspective, that there is more of a structure and that their team makes a little bit more sense than it did at times in last year's championship in particular.
Oh, the only thing, again, we must caution in relation to so early in the year. I mean, within 10 days previous, Clare had beaten them comprehensively in Waterford Crystal. And there was murmurings from people that work in this place as well from Tipperary that, that's a bad start. I mean, this time last year, Tipperary had started well. Tip had got to the league final. And, you can't define Tip after one game. Yes, it was impressive. There's no doubt about that. But we started to look at Tipperary after the league final last year as is the house of cards collapsing around them. Now, you could say after 5 or 6 games last year, there was a trend, and proximity to the championship definitely was a concern. So no more, I caution the same now that, yes, it's the first game, but let's take it in isolation. But let's look at it over a period of time. You were always going to get a bounce when Liam arrived back in. Now, as well as that, Tipperary have a whole setup, a whole structure. If you even look at the sponsors of the team and their involvement with Liam and the role they're going to play, this Tipperary team are going to be as well prepared as any. They're going to have a management structure. There's going to be no lack of backup there whatsoever. So what that does, it creates a situation for the players immediately that you train and you play to your optimal levels. You will want for nothing. Still, not every county has that. So a fully structured Tipperary with the ability of players that's there, they're a serious proposition this year.
And who is their best fullback?
Paddy Maher, in my view. Paddy Maher, and I've said this last year. And I hear people suggesting, it's a travesty taking him out of half back line. To me, he's the best fullback. To me, he's arguably will be proven to be the best fullback in the country this year. I think he's a superb athlete, and I think there was difficulties there in that fullback line last year, and similarly the previous year. And if you have a player that fills a pivotal role like number 3, well, to me, you put him there, and then you build from there up. People often say you take number 6 and you build from there up. Hurling's changed. It's a different game nowadays. Goals win games at the end of the day, and someone like that on the edge of the square is a rock, and I think he's going to persevere with him there, to be honest with you. I think he should do. I think it's well worth looking at.
Okay, because it certainly has been a move on the Hurling show last year. Shane Stapleton would have made the point that you need your best athletes at fullback, because that's frequently where the best athletes are for the opposition. Obviously, midfield halfbacks, there's a lot of running, but the speed guys, the ones who are able to, that short area quickness, the ones who are having a burst, are frequently the ones that the opposition are putting on the edge of the square. And to nullify that, you can feel like you're sacrificing quite a lot, but ultimately, if you're conceding huge amounts, you're going to lose games.
Well, an example of that, and I would agree with Shane on that, an example of that is the All-Ireland final, Kilkenny and Tip 3 years ago, where Shamie Callanan basically did what he liked. Tip looked to create a lot of space. JJ was no longer there. So all of a sudden, the shackles were thrown off Shamie Callanan. He was given loads of space. So when you give a player of that calibre a lot of space, and you isolate space all around him when you withdraw your half-forward line, obviously the indication is there. We want our best man up there, and we want space, and we believe he'll do the damage. And he did the damage. Now, you similarly turn that coin on the flip side, and you say Kilkenny decide to put TJ Reid isolated on the edge of the square. Well, who would you like on him if you're Tipperary? To me, Paddy Maher all day long. If you're going to have a brilliant inside forward line and you create space around him, for all the reasons you've suggested, Ger, you need somebody that's outstanding, that's able to contain it. And I believe he's the man that can do that.
I know I'm going to kind of double back down on Kilkenny here again, but it seems that Brian Cody has made a big effort in terms of locking down that number 3 jersey, and it seems that Hugh Lawler is picked it up for the time being. I'm not sure what you've seen of Hugh Lawler, Daithí, but I think regardless of how good he is, if you can hold down that jersey, it kind of frees up the likes of Pádraig Welsh to get out the field a bit more, which is kind of a win-win from a Kilkenny perspective.
Yeah, well, I'd agree with you. For the simple reason, I think Walsh has done an outstanding job there, but I've looked at him the last couple of years thinking, I'd love to have you out right half back, because, he's like Tommy in many respects in that he's such a dynamic player. He's brilliant to watch. He's just full of go, great speed, loves to attack, very good in the air, just a swashbuckling like type of player. He'll score points from you from out the field as well. And I've always thought if Kilkenny could nail down a number 3, well then it releases him and it strengthens things for them. So again, I revert back to the point. Lawler is young, he's given his opportunity. So let's just wait, let's give the guy an opportunity, and let's see how things develop over the league. I am sure Brian Cody is looking to tailor in 3 or 4 positions to cement down with some young fellas. Let's not forget Kelly 3 or 4 years ago against Offaly was going to town, and we all thought this is a new Kilkenny forward that he seems to bring in every couple of years that all of a sudden we've never heard of before, and now maybe this is his year to make it. That's the way Cody operates. It's a little bit early. Let's judge him at the end of the league. Brian will judge him at the end. Brian may very well judge him after 3 or 4 and say, that's my man or that's not my man. We'll know after a set period of games.
Can I ask you about the Limerick start to the league campaign? We were all wondering exactly how well they were going to deal with being All-Ireland champions. But when you look at the interviews, when you listen to what the team were saying, when you see anything that management team have done, you realise that, not that winning and losing isn't something that affects them, but that it's not the thing that defines them. That this is just a continuation of what it was that they were anyway already. And that sounds a bit weird and a bit airy-fairy, but you know what I mean? That
I do, Ger. Yeah.
It doesn't look like it's gone to their heads.
Yeah, it's really interesting you're raising that point, because I don't think we've had to contend with All-Ireland champions over the last, God, I can't remember how long, that so much talk has been about how grounded they are, how focused they are, how it hasn't changed them, how they haven't been defined by winning. They've been defined by the people that they are and how they are responding to this win. So I've been very intrigued to look at this from afar as to how Limerick are handling this. And on the basis that I was believing what I was hearing, I was pretty confident that we're going to win. Not that I was disregarding Wexford, but I just thought these are All-Ireland champions who really, really want more, who are grounded, who have parked it, who have had their enjoyment, who have embraced what it's done for them as people, that it'll always be with them for the rest of their lives. But it doesn't define you. You now move on. So it speaks volumes that, number one, there's a fantastic management structure behind these players that can keep them grounded. Number two, they went into the Bears pit last Sunday because Wexford under Daithí, with the All-Ireland champions visiting, would have afforded them the due respect of maybe applauding them onto the field and the Wexford supporters applauding the All-Ireland champions. And I knew once that ball was thrown in, Wexford would go for the jugular. They'd test every fibre. They'd test the pulse of Limerick and see, well, do you really want it, lads? You know, in the first or third week of January. And Limerick stood up to the challenge. They knew what was coming from Wexford and they faced it down. And it was attritional. And I was very impressed with Limerick.
The thing about Limerick obviously last year is that their entire All-Ireland final starting team got nominated for an All-Star. They all had individually brilliant years, so it's going to be tough to find that one or two new players who are going to pick up a starting spot. But ultimately, if you look at any of the great teams in either code over the last decade or two, there has always been one or two new players that have come into the starting team regularly, and that comes from the coldness of like the Brian Codys or the Jim Gavins of the world. Is John Kiley that cold, ruthless manager that he possibly can be, because he seems like a very amicable man when he does his media dealings?
I don't know if I necessarily agree with you there. I'll give you an example. I mean, Offaly's 4 All-Ireland wins from the 2 in the 80s and 2 in the 90s. We operated with a very limited panel. I would also suggest that the difference between Limerick and Cork last year was Limerick's greater strength and depth on the bench. When that game went to the dying embers, Limerick were the ones who could bring good players in. Cork were the ones who were shorn of that extra bit of talent on the bench. So I think that Limerick have a very strong squad. I think what that creates within the whole structure is the players that didn't make it, didn't start, but are on the bench and will have belief in themselves. They'll be pushing every bit as hard this year for someone that hits a lack of form. So I think he has a very good panel. If he picks somebody up, well, so be it. But I think what he'll be looking for is a bolter from his bench from last year to try and cement a position down. I think Limerick are in a good place panel-wise.
I did want to ask you about the quality of refereeing. Here's Eddie Brennan, who obviously is in charge now of a senior inter-county team and maybe doing his best to jostle his way up the pecking order for ultimately whenever that Kilkenny job does become available. He saw his Laois side be on the wrong side of a number of refereeing decisions, and hear what he had to say about the referee's assessor. Have a look.
I think it was obvious that there was an assessor sitting above in the stand, very obvious, and I think, you know, the ref did that way. I mean, to me, I think both sides were given frees. You know, there were, you know, I don't know. They just seemed to be yellow cards dished out very, very easily, very, very early. And look, fair enough, they have a job to do. I'm not going to turn around and criticise that, but I just think you definitely see a difference in how a referee referees when we all knew there was an assessor sitting above in the stands. You know, I saw one stage a fella, you know, flick to get a ball, and to me, he was genuinely trying to get a ball, and you know, it was a yellow card. And I think also, look, when players are dipping low, I find it very frustrating. If a player is standing his ground and a player comes in against him and dips low and grabs the arm, I don't see how that can be punished either. But look, they're only small things. I'm not going to, as I said, that's not trying to, you know, deflect attention away from the reality of it. We have a nice bit of work to do, and that's what we'll do. We have to just keep at it.
He's right, though, to bring this stuff up, because hurling shouldn't get complacent about the fact that everything's going well with regards to the competition structures at the moment. You can always make the game just a little bit better and keep it safer and make the forwards have a little bit of an advantage so that, you know, we keep this thing going forward.
Ger, I didn't know you were going to ask this question. I'm delighted you did. I tweeted about it last night. I went out for a long walk and it was in my head the whole way around about hurling and what I'm looking at now. There's two issues and Eddie's nailed one of them. There's two issues in hurling that absolutely infuriate me at the minute. One, we have ruck after ruck after ruck. What's contributing to it is, and I tried to engage with my good friend Brian Gavin last night, and I hope he'll come back to me on it. Referees are throwing a ball in between two players now. And there's a dozen players within 3 or 4 yards. And it ensues another ruck and another ruck. The rule says you've got to be 10 yards back. Enforce it. Because we want the game more open. And the other blight that's on our game is the use of the spare arm in a tackle. There's nothing in the rule book in hurling that allows you grab a player with your spare arm. And it's been coached into players. And coaches are getting paid phenomenal sums of money to go to counties. And they're spending a lot of time coaching illegal tactics. And I've watched it before games in Thurles, in the small little grids before games, inter-county teams playing the possession game, and the guys without the possession grabbing the arm, letting go quickly, and the next guy coming in. It's illegal, and it needs to be stopped. And I think Croke Park need to be issuing a diktat to referees. It's illegal. It's a blight in the game for the last 15 years. But referees are letting it go. You cannot grab a player by your arm. When we were playing, and you just couldn't. You blocked the player, you hooked the player, you could use your body, you could stand the player up. So the skills of the game aren't being coached. Negative tactics are being coached into players, which is negative fouling, and it's been coached into teams and players, and refs are letting it go. And it's gone so far, I fear we're not going to eradicate it. So it's suiting, you see these hurlers over the years, bigger and stronger. Why are they getting bigger and stronger? One is to break a tackle, but number two is how to tackle illegally. And I just wish Eddie hit the nail on the head in relation to that. The fact that hurling is competitive and there's a lot of teams, one of the reasons there's a lot more teams competitive now is because the skills difference between the top teams has narrowed, because negativity has narrowed that, because it is in your face type of hurling. We're not coaching enough skills into young children, we're coaching negativity into them.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. One last thing I did want to ask you was your take on the recent hike in price rises by the GAA for a range of different games. Obviously, qualifiers, All-Ireland final gone up by a tenner, the league game's gone up by £5 if you pay at the gate. What was your take on all that, Daithí? We haven't spoken to you since that happened.
Well, I was very, very interested. You interviewed my Offaly colleague last week. His name leaves me now at the moment. UCD graduate.
Paul Rouse.
Paul Rouse, yeah. And I watched it. It was very interesting. I mean, it's very, very simple. Paul Rouse just diluted that argument immediately, where he said factually it was wrong that and he totally contradicted the president, that there has been increases. I mean, if anyone needs to know the situation, look at that interview that you guys did with Paul last week, where he factually pointed out that the president was incorrect. There has been increases in our games, in the National League and in Championship over the last number of years. So, I mean, that's just blown wind. At the end of the day, that's spin. If there's been increases, there's been increase, Mr. President. Don't spin it. There has been increases. And I mean, you need to look at where things are at the moment. I know a lot of people I've spoke to over the last weekend. I've looked at it and I've said, do I want to pay €20 to go into a league game? I have the choice. So let's look at it like this. We have a choice. We either pay it or not. Some people can say, well, it's an extra €2 or whatever. Well, that's fine. If people want to pay it, people will pay it. If people don't want to pay it, people won't. People will vote with their feet. I will be selective about what I go to. If there's something that's down in Tullamore that I want to go to and I want to see, let's face it, I'll go and look at my county to see how they're going. But if they're playing Galway, they're playing Dublin next, and they're playing Galway and Tullamore, I'll go as much to see what Galway are shaping up like. And I'll pay €20. Do I agree with it? It's not the worst increase in the world, but it's wrong to suggest that there hasn't been increases since the last number of years. That's factually wrong, and that's where I'd stand on it.
All right, good man, Daithí. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Great to have you back on the show. Daithí Regan giving us some thoughts on the weekend's hurling. We'll obviously check in with Daithí across the rest of the league campaign and the championship as well.
It's nice of the hurling chiefs to get rid of relegation this year, to give football a bit of time in the spotlight. A bit more peril near the end of the league campaigns. And then, the hurling quarterfinals will come along and destroy football once again. But we're going to enjoy our time in the spotlight in a couple of weeks.
It's mad how the quarterfinals are like the most meaningless games in any competition.
They're always really good.
Ever. It's weird, isn't it? Like
they're so pointless, but everybody watches them.
But they're always epics. In retrospect, there was a game 2 years ago where Waterford were killing Galway. Galway made a comeback and beat them. It was a Waterford second string team that they were resting.
2 years ago, was it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and Galway kind of pinpointed that moment. It's like, actually, we got a bit of confidence back.
Yeah,
but it was a league quarter final. You're not supposed to care about these games.
Hammer tip in the league final.
Yeah. All right, Darren Cleary's in the studio with us next.